Danelle, thanks for joining me today. I'm looking forward to talking to you, getting your perspective on what's going on in El Salvador with respect to Bitcoin as a legal tender now.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. This is it's a fun topic. I think what President Bukele has done is really going to transform at least the focus and attention on Bitcoin.
Why do you say that?
Well, I think that any country that decides it's going to be legal tender sort of changes the idea of Bitcoin from just being something that is out there that only a certain segment of our population focuses on to something that others need to pay attention to. So I think it's a really great move in terms of just the blockchain space generally. I think there are challenges with it, and I think that they're going to see challenges in El Salvador, and we're going to see challenges elsewhere if other countries do this as well. But I think it's opportunity as well to create education, to amass a lot of knowledge around blockchain, and to be able to leverage the strengths of it and to recognize the weaknesses of it.
What are you going to be looking for? I mean, this is really the first real-time live experiment of Bitcoin as a payment method, a legal tender in a country. What will you be looking for?
Well, I think that the really important thing is this law has put attention to the fact that things we already knew, that the remittance, the cost of remittance and the way that remittance actually takes place is really fragmented.
Right.
And so I think that because of that, what I want to see is how remittance can change as a result of laws like this. So not just focusing on Bitcoin, but also maybe focusing on some stablecoins, which stablecoins seem to be a lot easier in terms of payments. If you think about just El Salvador in specific, the diaspora transferred 6 billion of remittances last year alone into El Salvador. That's 23% of the GDP, which is huge for that country. So getting this right is important. I want to see education. I want to see a lot of focus on the idea that Bitcoin is volatile. So not everyone needs to understand that when they get into it. But education around how to do this and how also to leverage other blockchains and frankly, stablecoins is going to be a really important part of it.
I want to talk about that in a minute, but I mean, you make a good point. Remittances are a huge part of GDP. It's about $195 per household per month. I mean, that's significant. And, there are critics who say, moving money via Bitcoin into El Salvador is more expensive for the receiver because they really want to be able to use dollars. I mean, dollars is still, dollars are valuable and not enough places accept Bitcoin yet for them to be able to spend it, and it is volatile. So, while remittances are a key use case, I mean, to your point, it's still relatively expensive, at least right now.
Yeah, and I think it's expensive and it's complicated for some users. You got to think about, are there going to be custodial wallets that are leveraged or only non-custodial wallets? And those are more complicated to use. So that's where the education comes in. I do think that this rollout happened really quickly. And so we need to actually see education come along with it. Yeah. Your point is totally valid that cash and dollars is the currency that is known and they're comfortable with in El Salvador and also in most countries. And so we need to think about, one of the things that Bitcoin has such a high value right now. And when you think about purchasing, one of my favorites, a Diet Coke in El Salvador, it's going to be like what, 0.00000000005 of a Bitcoin. That's hard for people to think through.
Very hard. Exactly.
So I think it's one of those things, until the markets actually shift and until you're thinking in terms of Bitcoin and not translating Bitcoin to dollars, it's going to be really hard to make it effective, but possible. We just need a lot of education.
And we don't think in fractions.
We don't. And it's just, those fractions are hard for anyone. I know
they're very hard.
Some great minds out there.
Yeah, it takes you back to third grade math. And we didn't like it then, we don't like it now. But consumers are uncomfortable with it in El Salvador. I mean, and I think education, to your point, is really important, because 70% of people say they don't want it because they don't understand it, and it's the fraction thing, and it's too abstract for people to really understand what it means to get it and spend it.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things we always talk about Bitcoin for is it's a really great store of value. And then there are other blockchains out there that are really good for, other things and DeFi and payments, and there's just opportunity that abounds. And I think that really leveraging this moment and this opportunity to be able to educate not just on what Bitcoin can offer, but also what these other blockchains can offer, I think that that would be a huge win for El Salvador. So I'm hoping that we see some transition into that kind of conversation as well.
So what are you doing to build on now the awareness of crypto as a legal tender in a country? What are you doing to build on that awareness and bring some recognition to some of the other blockchains and cryptocurrencies for these use cases?
Yeah, well, we spend a lot of time already working with governments all over the world. I just spent a significant amount of time working with the World Economic Forum and lots of really cool colleagues on understanding the regulatory environment and also helping regulators negotiate the challenges of what blockchain has to offer. And so we're going to continue down that path and working with governments like the El Salvadorian government to really focus on, maybe there are other ways to be able to bring this really wonderful technology, in addition to Bitcoin, other ways to deliver it into these various different countries and to make it part of what they educate their constituents on and bring value to their constituents for. So we're just going to continue much of the same that we do and hope that we, can have an impact on that education and that need.
Well, I mean, sticking on the remittance use case for just a minute, I mean, the work that we've done together, I think highlights a really interesting data point, which is, just looking at the US to other country corridors alone, there's so much that's sent. $76 billion of remittances are sent. So that's a lot of money. But if you think about how much is spent on fees and moving that money from the US to receivers, it's I'm looking at my notes, it's about $3.5 billion. I mean, that's a lot of money. 4.7% of remittances are spent on those fees. So there is an opportunity, there is a use case for enabling, blockchain and crypto to solve for that problem. And stablecoins, I know, are one of the crypto assets that you use across your network to do that.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I think it's on average 7 to 8% of any remittance that the fees are. That's a lot when you're dealing with just $10, for example. I mean, that's a significant percentage of it. And so what I want to see is these, we actually believe, we're big believers in stable coins. Asset issuance is really simple on Stellar. And so these stable coins that are one-to-one fiat backed are really, because they're not volatile, they don't have the challenges associated with with cryptocurrency, with the native tokens. And so then you can actually see that transfer happens pretty seamlessly, 3 to 5 seconds, it's done. The great thing about this is you want to see competition in the market with these developers that are leveraging this and creating these remittance opportunities so they can bring the price down. So competition is king here, right? The more you have folks using this, the more opportunity for others to compete and to bring the fees down for the user. For the developer, the Stellar, for example, is you can do 100,000 transactions for less than a penny. That's remarkable. For the consumer, you need that kind of value to be transferred to them too. And blockchain can do that. So we just need to get that competition up, get the usage up, get the education up, and I think that we can do that.
Satisfy the regulators' concerns about stablecoin and the accessibility of being able to get dollars per stable coin if in fact there's a run on stable coins for whatever reason, and consumers not being left out or being harmed as a result of not having enough reserves.
Well, I think that this actually is a really important point also about competition, because stable coins that are actually very transparent in what their holdings look like and how they hold their assets, that one-to-one backing is going to be a really, really important play. So one of the things that I love about competition is it's actually oftentimes beneficial for the consumer. And here, as we are seeing more and more regulatory looks at this, at stablecoins in general, you're seeing momentum and movement to actually make it more transparent, to move, actually, some of them have moved their assets away from doing investments to just holding the assets in treasuries and dollars, for example, for US stablecoins. That is a really great opportunity for end users who are leveraging these assets and for developers. So I think, again, regulation sometimes helps with competition and creates movement in a direction that's useful for consumers. So I think that we're going to see more and more of that here.
Do you think that there'll be competition in El Salvador for other blockchains and coins, or do you think that the government is focused on making Bitcoin a success?
I don't know. I mean, I think what the president has actually done there is a pretty remarkable step. And he's really trying to focus on the key concern that he has for his region, which is the fact that remittances come into the country and are so pricey, and it's so important to the GDP there. I do think that we have an opportunity to be able to create, to not just use Bitcoin, but to say, and here we have these others that may actually support use cases that are more specific to the need that you're looking at. I think it's a remarkable move. I think it's a positive step for blockchain. I think we just need to focus more on what are the other use cases that you want to pay attention to, and how can we solve them.
And you know, another point that's been raised, I'm sure you've thought about this and probably talked to others about it as well, is, you know, whether this is an attempt to circumvent, you know, the existing fiscal and economic infrastructure to create, you know, monetary authority outside of what is considered the dollar, which is of course the currency today. So are you worried about that? Do you worry about that as an, I don't know whether it's an unintended consequence or maybe it's an intended consequence as a result of El Salvador making this move?
No, I'm not particularly worried about that. I think that one of the things that's really awesome about blockchain generally is the fact that it actually can work with existing financial infrastructure, and it doesn't have to supplant the infrastructure that exists. It actually can work with it and interoperate with it. That means that, you know, right now I know that the dollar carries a lot of value in a lot of geographies. Each of the individual countries want their currency to have that value as well. And so I think that this just, if we can have interoperability amongst all of these systems, we can probably create and help to create value in each of those regions as well. So I'm not really worried about it. I think it's an interesting point that we need to debate and focus on. But I think that, you know, all of this is just opportunity and creates engagement in a space that really needs attention for real world use cases, which is what I love about it.
What is the precedent this will set in your opinion?
Well, I think we're going to see other countries that are going to look at this as well, because there was a lot of attention. And the one thing that we've learned, if you look at what's happened in the US recently with respect to the infrastructure bill, is that the folks in crypto and blockchain are very vocal and a very strong contingent. And so I think that getting support in these other countries from that strong contingent it's a good thing, right? For those countries to have that kind of support. So I think that we might see other countries make these kinds of moves as well. But what I think is going to be really cool is when they also then look at the plethora of other opportunities available to them.
Right. Well, we shall see. It's very, very early days, but it's fascinating that we'll be able to, you know, almost document this in real time as we see Bitcoin and, you know, blockchain payments in El Salvador take shape. A competitive market, we hope, take shape as well, and other countries contemplate their moves with respect to crypto, blockchain payments, blockchain, and use cases that make sense for consumers and the businesses there.